so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good evening and welcome to the Hoosier Huddle Podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is Alex Compton, and we're here kicking off our spring football coverage on a snowy day in Indiana and probably snowy up in Chicago where you are, Alex, as well. College football has no off season anymore. It used to be once January 1st ended, or whatever that weekend was, you had a few months to get ready. You had signing day in February. That's all but gone now. And spring practice is coming up around the corner. IU hasn't announced an official date yet, but they have for the spring game, which will be on April 19th at noon in Memorial Stadium. So we're here. We're going to talk about Indiana's transfer portal haul and then answer some of the questions we got on X today from some of our followers and readers. So, Alex, welcome in. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah. Cold day up in Chicago, but that's why you have to, when the weather calls, you wear a 2025 college football playoff Indiana football sweatshirt. So could definitely be worse. I think we really haven't kind of talked about this roster in a while, Sammy. So I know there's lots of basketball chatter and understandably so, but
there's basketball chatter? Who knew?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Figured this would be good to kind of reset where the roster's at right now, who's coming in. IU, again, was very, very, very busy. The staff was very busy, very, very busy again this portal cycle. So added a lot of guys. We'll talk about kind of each one and then get into overall thoughts on the class. I've seen some different things. Is this plug and play? Did we improve the talent level? Stuff like that, kind of go over all that. And then we got some good questions from our Twitter crew today as well, so we can head on some of those. But Sammy, it was a pretty big class for IU again. I think the longer SIG is here, I think the hope, and he's kind of said it, is that this incoming number goes down, and you're maybe grabbing guys that you had recruited and coming out of high school, or for whatever reason, you have a chance to really land some impact guys. But IU brings in 20, 17 go out. Of the outgoing 17 right now, I would say the biggest school is probably McCully at Michigan, and Taven Jackson at Central Florida. So not a ton of guys that have landed at, I would say, steps up. So compared to prior years with Tom Allen, you would see guys play well, bolt for bigger schools. A lot of the guys that have left the roster this year have kind of taken a step down, I would say, from level of competition or roster construction. So, some good names, but Signetti in his presser said haven't lost anybody they were projecting to be a starter out of the portal. So that should be good and hopefully raises the talent level in 2025. So let's start. Grant Wilson comes in. It'll be his 6th year of college football. Quarterback from Old Dominion, with the news that Tyler Cherry will be out maybe for the whole season. Needed a guy.
It is. I think it's officially for the whole season now because was named a student coach, and then should be able to come back in the 2026 season. So some roster management there from IU, and we'll get into that when we talk about the questions. But with some new scholarship rules and roster limitations and all that stuff, there are going to be some moves to create space, and that was one of them. So, Grant Wilson comes in from ODU, a guy that SIG is familiar with, has played against, has experience where if, Fernando Mendoza goes down, you have an experienced backup to come in and play. And who knows, maybe Grant Wilson pushes Mendoza a little bit too. But it stinks because you thought Tyler Cherry, could use spring practice as a vault and get some reps, some valuable reps. But Grant Wilson, uh, with Tyler Cherry's injury, now is a very nice insurance policy for IU.
Yeah, for sure. You get a experienced guy. He's played a bunch of football. Started the first 3 games last year for Old Dominion before he missed the rest of the season with an injury. So, if there's one thing you're looking at in the quarterback room, I think technically Grant Wilson, obviously it's a long off season, but he would be pretty rusty as well if he had to come into action. But yeah, good pickup. I think the radar one and something good teams do is get a guy, and obviously this is probably where NIL comes into play. You get a guy that's going to use his last year of eligibility, his last year of playing football to come be a backup. So nice pickup for IU. I thought kind of an under the radar one. And when that came out, obviously then the Cherry news made a lot of sense. So moving on, you add a long snapper, Sam Lindsay from Georgia State. So that was something IU plugged in the portal last year. So again, looks like it'll be another kind of one and done long snapper. They still have Mark Langston on the roster, but Sam Lindsay comes up from Georgia State. Sticking in the South, I think it was at the time, it might have been IU's first commit out of the portal, if I remember right, in Lee Beebe Jr., running back at a UAB. This is one I know some of the Hoosier Huddle folks really, really like him. He has really nice tape. And something I think you'll see when we talk about Roman Hemby as well. Definitely a threat out of the backfield to catch some balls, but BB, nice pick.
Yeah, you lose Justice Ellison, you lose Tyson Lawton, and you lose Elijah Green, who ended up at Sam Houston State, I believe, in the portal. So you needed some running back depth. You get a guy who's been productive, 5'10", 220, kind of built like a bowling ball. And we saw how successful that was for IU last year with Ellison and Lawton just pounding away at the defenses. And that's what IU is going to do. They use both of those backs mainly. Sometimes they use Kaleon Black as well. So, Signetti and Mike Shanahan are going to be comfortable using 3 running backs, and he's going to definitely be in those top 3 running backs.
Yeah, definitely. Third team All-American or all conference in the American last season, a couple games over 100 yards, but yeah, really nice tape. And that's one, if you search him on Twitter, there's lots of cool highlights, lots of nice videos. Pretty good end-to-end speed, pretty shifty. I think, honestly, very similar like running style to Justice Ellison. I don't think he's going to take the top off the defense necessarily, but definitely a really good athlete, definitely good at a variety of different schemes. So, yeah, like you said, we'll see how it shakes out. I think Hemby is probably your starter, and we'll touch on him in a little bit. But with Kaleon Black coming back, BB, I think you have a nice trio there of experience, kind of like they did last year. So there's a couple of young guys I like too behind them. Kobe Martin, the in-state guy, and the true freshman Quono coming in. But yeah, I think those top 3, that's a pretty good recipe. And we saw what pretty much 3 running backs were able to do last year. They were able to split carries pretty nicely, get guys involved. I think we'll see. I think if Hemby is your starter, I think that Black and BB battle for running back 2 is going to be pretty intense, but obviously a good problem to have. But BB comes in from UAB, so that's a good one there.
Yep.
All right, moving on. One that's near and dear to my heart. So we have an NIU guy moving over to IU. Fans remember from the Tom Allen era, Weston Kramer, the old defensive tackle, Mahler on the interior. He was actually pretty underrated. He was on a really bad team, but he had honestly some pretty good games. Marion Knighton, cornerback. He's originally out of Florida, so Southern Florida. NIU transfers in. He'll have a couple years to play, which is nice. Rangy, super fast, 24/7. Actually has him as a 4-star transfer, so moved up a star from high school. He had the interception against Riley Leonard to kind of clinch that game for NIU. And NIU in their secondary, they kind of move guys all over. So he played, honestly, some boundary safety, man-to-man on the outside, little slot. Pretty versatile. We'll see what happens there. You lose Jameer Johnson. I think he's probably the most notable outgoing transfer for IU. So you have that spot opposite of D'Angelo Pons up for grabs now. You bring in Gandy as well, which we'll talk about. But I like Knighton. I think he'll play. Obviously, you need a bunch of guys that are ready to play. But of course, a guy that has put up some numbers. But I like Knighton, Sammy, but you could have told me it was anybody from NIU, and I would have said, yeah, I like them. So, but yeah, I mean, bringing in Knighton, I think that's good for the room.
Yeah, and it's kind of a loaded cornerback room too, with Pons, Knighton, Gandy, and then you have some young guys coming in as well that redshirted last year. Jeff Phillips, or no, he's not on the roster anymore. But you have some guys who are coming back from injury, some guys who redshirted. So it's kind of a loaded room. And then let's move on to the next guy, who I think is one of the more important pieces of this transfer class is Hosea Wheeler out of Western Kentucky. He was their best defensive lineman, plays defensive tackle. They need somebody to come in and fill the shoes of CJ West, who played very well last year and is going to play his way onto an NFL roster later this spring and probably into the draft. He got a combine invite. But, you look at some of these lower, group of five teams, you look how they play against Power Four conferences, and he played against Alabama and some other SEC schools, and things like that. It performed well, and on the defensive line against offensive lines in the Power Four, if you could, if you could be productive there, it usually translates. CJ West was the same way, so he's probably your starting defensive tackle, one of them at when the season kicks off. Adds is 6'3", 300 pounds. Just what you need. Losing CJ West, just some guy to clog up the middle, make plays, let your other defensive linemen and linebackers make plays. And as we saw last year, Indiana's defensive line might not have been the most talented, but or the most highly rated, but they sure were productive.
Oh yeah, really, really caused havoc, shut down the run. Yeah, Wheeler, I think might be at Mendoza. We'll talk about, but like defensively, he's the biggest pickup out of the portal. He was obviously in high demand, and we saw that with CJ West last year. One, you have to beat out schools to pitch them on the vision and the playing time and all that, but I don't know the number. He was expensive. I mean, he was expensive to get him over all the other schools that were after him. Like Sammy said, 6'3", 300 pounds, first team all conference USA last year. He played 619 snaps, which led Conference USA for defensive linemen. For a big dude, I mean, that's impressive. Productive, knock on wood, durable. Second play of the season, strip sack against Alabama and Jalen Milroe. Guy was impressive, and I think he has really, really good tape, and he was super, super productive. Had a bajillion tackles, made a ton of starts, played a lot of football. Sweet name, and he's going to wear number 0. I mean, all around pretty sweet combo. But yeah, I think big pickup. Like, I think he slots in, like you said, one of those tackle slots. Can move him around. He's pretty athletic. I think he's pretty good pass rusher from what I've seen, at least. But yeah, grabbing Wheeler again, big one. Guys like that aren't cheap. Guys like that don't hit the portal and come to IU in the past. And you land an impact defensive tackle in West and then Wheeler this year. And IU got 2 of them. But Mekhi Jackson, Sammy, Appalachian State, another guy Signetti's familiar with, put up good numbers. You had to reload the wide receiver room. You go out and get him. Productive.
Yeah, he was productive at Appalachian State, and I wanted to talk about him. And then the next wide receiver, Tyler Morris, kind of in the same breath. But Mekhi Jackson last year, 46 catches, 745 yards, 5 touchdowns. He can run the ball too. Had 5 runs for 90 yards and a touchdown, 8 kick returns, 2 punt returns. So he could be a guy that steps into that punt return spot that was left by Miles Price last year. Um,
Mhm.
that came up with some big plays and some big games as well. So he's a guy who could step right into that room, fight for that starting slot position, or play on the outside as well. His size isn't, he's not a tremendously big receiver at 6 foot, 200 pounds. But he fits right into that room. And then the next guy, Tyler Morris from Michigan, was their leading wide receiver. Now, Colston Loveland led the Wolverines in yards last year, and they didn't throw the ball very well. But Tyler Morris made 23 catches for 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. The year before, when they won the national title, um, he made 13 catches for nearly 200 yards, and he's just had a productive career. He should have a nice role for IU. He's got the speed, and any time that you could take the leading receiver for Michigan. Now, I know that Michigan's passing game was trash. Nobody needs to blow up the comments on Facebook and YouTube. Yes, they were trash. But when they were good, he was still a weapon. He was a weapon against Alabama in the college football playoff semifinal. Um, and honestly, if you just look at you traded Donovan McCulley for him, and I think IU would win that trade 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, yeah. Morris, quick one on Jackson, kind of fun. He was actually teammates with Surratt at St. Francis. So that's kind of
Yep.
fun, like full circle little thing there. But yeah, Tyler Morris, I think, is going to be a huge weapon for this offense. If you watched how they used Keyshawn Williams, Miles Cross, and some others in the slot, I think that's probably what sold Morris, honestly, was you show me how you're going to use me. I mean, this guy's an insane athlete. He was a top 200 recruit out of high school, right? So when we talk about did the talent level improve or what kind of guys are you getting out of the portal, this guy was a top 200 recruit in the nation by like ESPN 24/7, Rivals, coming out of high school, out of Illinois. Big pickup. A lot of people remember when they beat Alabama. He had a really sweet catch and run against them in the Rose Bowl in the semifinal, the playoff. Super shifty, great athlete. Made a couple plays against us in Bloomington. But yeah, I think when you talk about things that will probably stay the same from the scheme last year, I think how they use the slot with Williams and Cross and kind of some of those tunnel screens and drag routes, I think Morris will slot honestly right into that role and should do a really nice job. So that's one where you say transfer that might have the biggest like statistical impact. I think he's definitely up there for me. I think he's going to be a key part of the offense, a guy they're going to build plays and scheme around. And I'm just really excited to see how they kind of use him. But yeah, Morris, big pickup. Jackson, I think, also really good. He split snaps a lot of the time, boundary out wide and then in the slot. Pretty good go ball, contested catch guy. So I think, again, another thing I think we will see stay pretty similar is a lot of those back shoulder throws that we saw Rourke really, really excel with. Surratt and Cooper are great at them. I think Jackson's another guy like that that's going to be good at those kind of boundary back shoulder throws.
Yeah. Next, we move to Riley Nowakowski, tight end from Wisconsin. Played fullback there, was kind of an H-back as well. This guy might not make the box score often, but his impact is going to be felt. He's a great blocker, very physical, adds depth to that tight end room, which IU needs, like production and talent and depth in there. 6'1", 243. He has decent hands, can catch the ball. Probably could run the ball too if you want to hand it to him and go old school with the fullback. But just a much needed kind of underrated piece there. And then moving up, Mitch McCarthy at punter from UCF. And look, we all love James Evans, and he had a fantastic career for IU, and I think he's among the school leaders in career punting yardage, if not at the top of it. But he cost you the two games that you lost. Um, or at least he cost you a
Yeah,
chance to be in those games.
yeah, really hurt your chances. I'm not going to say he did not lose the games, but yeah, he certainly really hurt your chances. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just seemed the big spots that he couldn't handle the pressure with, the drop snap at Ohio State, and then in the cold at Notre Dame, his first like 4 or 5 punts, he averaged 28 yards a kick, and that's you can't give Notre Dame short fields like that and survive. So bringing in McCarthy gives you a veteran punter who's been around. He can kick the ball, who's played in tough environments at UCF. Let me get his exact numbers on there.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's 6'6". He's a big dude too. So I think you
yeah,
throw
he's a
him,
guy
you
in the
throw
old in
Milkowski
the
in the
old.
backfield, and I think you let McCarthy run the ball. I think you got a
He's
new
like
package here.
when you had the old NCAA dynasty in 2014, and you're in like year 4 and need a punter. He's the guy that were like, oh yeah, there's that 6'6", 240-pound punter that is just computer generated, but he averages 44 yards a kick, and can kick with the best of them. So I think that's another under the radar pickup there. And then moving on again, IU hits the Sun Belt for another defensive lineman in Dominic Radcliffe from Texas State, 6'3", 285. Another productive group of 5 defensive linemen who will play that defensive tackle position. It gives you productive depth there with Hosea Wheeler, uh, Marcus Burris, and some other guys. So I know we had a question on the defensive line on our from our X today, but you feel pretty good about that interior of the defensive line and how they replace some of these guys in the transfer portal.
Yeah, Radcliffe, another good one. I remember when we first got him, our article, I'll have to look it up, but we had he graded out really well in interior run defense in PFF. So Wheeler had just insane box score stats. Ratcliffe really graded out well against the run on the interior. And I think Pat Kuntz, the defensive tackles coach, I think he liked the tweet or something acknowledging that. But that was a big pickup schematically. Plug the run. IU was outstanding against the run last season. So for me, that was more telling of we're not taking everybody. We want a guy that fits what we need him to do. And I thought Radcliffe, another good pickup, another big body, 6'3", 300 pounds, played a bunch of football, honorable mention all conference last year. But yeah, graded out really well against the run. And I wish I had that number or that stat, but you'll just
he was 16th nationally against the run as defensive tackles.
Yeah,
it was position specific. So next, Brendan Frankie, kicker. He's going to be the kickoff specialist from Texas State, and then we'll get into the two headliners here. Fernando Mendoza, quarterback from Cal, comes over. IU beats out Georgia, several other big schools for him, including hometown Miami, to bring in to replace Curtis Rourke. And we could spend the whole show on Fernando Mendoza right now. But threw for over 3,000 yards, 16 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. Ran the ball decently well as well, 100 yards on the ground, two rushing touchdowns. Do we see a little bit more quarterback run this year? Probably, if you're playing a quarterback with 2 working ACLs. Maybe not design runs, but rolling the pocket and things like that. Mendoza made a lot of big-time throws under pressure. He stayed healthy, and his little brother's on the team as well. in Alberto Mendoza. So he's got 2 years left to play if he wants them. And I just think this is, if you're going to start stacking seasons at IU, what you need to do, it comes down to quarterback play. You saw that kind of fizzle out. You saw it fizzle out in the Tom Allen era, where you just never had a healthy quarterback, and it really affected the team. Now you're going from Curtis Rourke, who finished ninth in the Heisman, to an all ACC guy in Fernando Mendoza, with some quality guys behind him as well. He could be just as good or better than Curtis Rourke. And Curtis Rourke played outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a healthy Fernando Mendoza for the whole season, he should put up better numbers than Curtis Rourke did on one ACL and 4 fingers on his throwing hand.
Yeah. I mean, huge pickup for obviously a ton of reasons. First one is, at the time they got him, so I mean, they must have been pretty confident, but it's not that there wasn't anybody left. But if you didn't land him, it was kind of like, crap, what's next? Who is the quarterback for Indiana next season? It was clear it wasn't going to be Taven Jackson. You knew Cherry was out. You knew they wanted to bring in an experienced guy. I mean, there were still options in the portal, but nothing to the level of Mendoza. So obviously, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but it seemed like they would kind of put all their eggs into the Mendoza basket here, and it worked. You literally beat out Georgia and Kirby Smart, who was preparing to keep playing in the college football playoff. You beat out Miami, who needed a quarterback, for an all-conference guy that played really, really well in bad circumstances. Huge. Like, just, again, optics, perception, massive. IU went toe-to-toe with historical Blue Buds, 2 teams coming off of pretty good seasons, and you won. And again, he's not cheap. That was not a cheap recruitment. And obviously a lot of things go into the recruitment. I'm not going to say he just went where he got the most money, because a lot of it goes into it, but he's not going somewhere where he's getting way less money. So again, IU landed this guy against the best of the best teams that have crazy resources to obviously plug up a massive hole and something you need to replace. So yeah, we'll probably do tons of deeper dives on him and the offense as spring ball rolls on. I don't think you're going to see many design runs with him. Like, he is more mobile, but he can throw the ball, and that's why you got him. You need to keep him up. You need to keep him upright.
Yeah, I'm saying that they probably will roll the pocket more than they did with Rourke, especially if we knew something happened in fall camp. Nobody released it, but moving laterally with torn ACL is not easy. Moving at all with torn ACL is not easy.
Yeah.
So having, hopefully a healthy Fernando Mendoza will allow you to move the pocket, will allow you to roll him out and do different things with the offense. And if he needs to run, he can run. They're not going to run the offense like they did with Taven. He's a much better thrower than Taven. I think he has a much better feel for the vision for the pass game than Taven. But you could see some things where, hey, if it's not there, run, and stuff like that. The next guy has been a thorn in the side of Indiana football for a while, but if you can't beat Signetti, join him. Roman Henby, kind of a shocker when he announced he was coming to IU in the portal, but this to me gives this running. So over the last couple of years, we said the wide receiver room needed some diversity. And we're not talking about DEI and all that stuff. It's how you use your guys. Not everybody is a 6'2", 220-pound Cadillac who's not super fast. But the running back room last year, all the guys were basically the same except for Elijah Green. Now you have a proven starter who could hit the home run, who could catch the ball and be a home run threat too. And he's played a ton of football.
Yeah.
At the Power 4 level. He's played in the Big Ten. He's been successful in the Big Ten. He's always one of the better backs in the Big Ten, and now he's in Bloomington and gives you that, okay, instead of driving the ball 14 plays, we could score in the run game from anywhere on the field. And IU fans have seen it when he's been at Maryland. He had a 85-yard touchdown run or 75-yard touchdown run against IU last year that kind of got Maryland back into the game. But this is a huge pickup for IU and really makes that running back room a strength again after losing Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton. But it gives you more of a home run threat than those guys who just pound you for 10, 12, 15 yards and just bully their way into the end zone. Which, I mean, look, if you're scoring touchdowns, does it matter how many plays it takes each time? Not really. And that's what IU did last year.
Yeah, another good one. I've always liked him. He on that run, he did get a really nice block from the official. But yeah, productive, experience. Seems like a good locker room guy too. Like, I think that's the key when you lose a lot of like the James Madison guys and the Curtis Rourkes and the Williams. Those kind of, you like need some of these older guys that have been around just to help make sure all these young guys you're going to be counting on probably more than you did last year know how we're doing things, are doing things the right way, experienced when they go this year play at Oregon, at Iowa, at Penn State. Like, Hemby is going to be able to help in all these situations. And Mendoza too. Like, Mendoza's played in some of those big environments, and those are 3 tough road games for IU this season. So
Yep.
I think that experience helps for sure. But yeah, Hemby, love it. Really good pickup. Do want to shout out, don't know who it is, but ESPN Zin was all over that one. So don't know the scoop or the insight there, but shout out to ESPN Zin for that one. And Hemby's going to wear number 1, which I always think looks pretty cool on running backs. So yeah, great pickup.
Yeah. Then we're moving to the offensive line. Zen Michaeliski from Ohio State tackle. This one, he struggled. He struggled against Nebraska. Yeah, he was hurt in that game. But there's a lot of criticisms that he's just, he had a lot of talent and a lot of potential, but wasn't living up to it. Now you get him healthy, you throw him onto an offensive line that's coached by Bob Bosted, and maybe you move him into guard. To where you put at least in this offense, your guy who pulls a lot more. Maybe he's successful, but he gives you a guy who started some games for the eventual national champion, who comes, I believe he's an Indiana kid too.
He is. Yeah.
He's an Indiana kid coming home, playing for your hometown school. It's, take a flyer on him. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I think IU has enough depth on the offensive line to figure it out. But this was one of the ones where you go, okay, you get an offensive lineman from Ohio State, but maybe he wasn't as successful as he was supposed to be at Ohio State.
Yeah, maybe not. We'll see. Like, consistent snaps always help. Obviously, in Columbus, you're going up against a bunch of dudes. So probably tough if you're not consistent in the rotation or knowing where your snaps are going to come from, that kind of stuff. But, I mean, just body type-wise, 6'6", 330, like, you look at the lines that dominate, like, he looks like a guy that is on those lines. So we'll see. I think we'll get into it after we're done with this haul here, but he's kind of the biggest question for me. Obviously, Trey Weddich off to hopefully the NFL. Right tackles is open. You brought in a guy we'll talk about next in Benson, but yeah, we'll see. I think you got to feel confident in him because Weddich was so good on that right side. But we'll see. They must add confidence because, again, I don't care who you are. If you're a Power 4 offensive lineman with his body, again, you are not cheap in the portal. So IU must believe in him. He must believe in IU. It's his last year eligibility. So cool homecoming story for him. But that one kind of flew under the radar, that recruitment. But yeah, IU has a couple holes to plug on the offensive line, which we can talk about. But Mikowski, I think if the season started tomorrow, which I kind of wish it did, I think he's probably your right tackle, but we'll see. I think that's for spring ball to kind of decide.
Yeah, and the health obviously always plays a part into it. Next, we talk about old friend Lewis Moore is coming
Yes.
back to IU. Kirk Cinetti said that after seeing the success they had at IU, Moore wanted to come back, and you welcome it with open arms. Clearly, didn't burn a bridge. Has trust in the guy not to come and mess up the locker room and things.
Yep.
And I think there were questions going into the portal about the secondary and especially at safety. Now you bring in a guy who's played in the Big Ten, played in the SEC, was productive. He came in as a wide receiver too to IU. He played both ways, not at IU, but before IU, transitioned to safety, played that, that rover role, and that's probably where he'll land, is that rover role, that hybrid role, which he is most successful at. And you get another veteran guy, Alex, and as you said, these veteran guys have gone into big environments, who know how to stabilize things if things get out of hand at Oregon or Penn State or wherever, who can calm the team down and say, hey, we've got plenty of time and turn things around. So another nice pickup there.
Yeah, that was a fun one for me. He was so fun to watch, and he was on some bad teams, but he always was really frustrated when IU lost. He seemed to really care. And he just has that, you can't describe it, but he just kind of seems to be around the ball, and the ball bounces his way, or he gets the deflections, or it's not
kind of
luck,
like Amari Farrell. It's like the opposite of baseball, when the guy makes 4 errors and he's going to get the next 5 fly balls.
Yeah.
But that's what it seems like with Lou Moore, is that he has a nose for the ball. His instincts are really, really good, which puts him in the right position to know where things are going. And that's how you end up with, oh, there's Lou Moore again.
Yeah.
And things like that. Next, let's move on to tight end Holden Stays. Another guy, he's coming from Tennessee, started his career at Notre Dame, was a highly rated recruit. He's the number 1 tight end in the portal, has a ton of potential, probably didn't live up to what his ratings were. That you go, look, if you're going to come to IU, we're going to take you. And I think this gives him more of a passing threat at the tight end position than they've had in a while. And Zach Horton was an absolute dude, but he wasn't going to be the big play passing threat that some of these high-powered offenses have in Power 4 football. But
he's the only one, I think, in this portal class that maybe if you throw Mikowski in there too, that don't meet the production over potential mantra that he's talked so much about. Didn't put up crazy numbers at either of his 2 schools, but if you watch the tape, you can see that there could be something here. And again, we talk about athletes and body types, this is a guy IU would not have been able to get out of high school in the old days. We'll see how recruiting goes the next couple of years, but this is a guy that could really blossom. And from the Cal days, Mendoza really threw the ball well up the seam to the tight end. They had a really good tight end play, so I think that's one Mendoza's going to like. But yeah, just talent and body type. That's definitely an upgrade just in terms of pure athleticism. But we'll see.
He's played a ton too. He's played in plenty of games. So it's experience over potential at that point. Finally, we'll get to the last 4 here. Ryland Gandy. We talked about the cornerback room. I think the cornerback room's really deep. Gandy will probably be penciled in as a starter opposite Pons, which gives you 2 really, really good players on the edges. And if you want to go play man defense and start getting exotic with blitzes and stuff, you could do that with these guys. He's an all ACC guy at Pitt, Just an absolute dude
Yeah, really.
at corner.
Yep.
6 foot 180 long, could play. Next, Khalil Benson, another friend of the program,
That's right.
who comes back. This one kind of surprised me because going into his recruitment with Colorado, kind of seemed like you know there might have been some bad blood, but clearly, didn't burn bridges. Wants to come back. Had a productive year at Colorado, but he's a guy who are you putting him at guard? Are you moving him back to tackle? What's the deal there? And spring practice is going to be huge for them because he could play both.
Yep.
Uh, and things like that. But in the IU offense, a guard has to be more athletic than the tackle, it seems, with pulling and things like that. But again, gives that offensive line depth, experience. And if he ends up not starting, it's not because he's not good. It's because somebody else stepped up.
Yep.
So you're now talking about going 7 deep at least before we get to Pat Coogan and some other guys. Devin Boykin, another defensive back safety from North Carolina State, productive guy, all ACC guy, coming in, shores up that defensive backfield, gives you some depth that you didn't have. Probably gives Bryson Baldwin or Byron Baldwin. Byron Baldwin a little bit of runway to get used to playing college ball. And a mentor for some of these young guys. And you don't have to play as many plays. I think that one of the signatures of six teams are, guys are going to play. If you're going to help the team, you're going to play. It could be one play, it could be 10 plays, it could be 50 plays. But if you're good enough to play, you'll play. And if your goal is to win a national championship, and we've seen it this year, in 2024-25, you're going to need guys, you're going to need depth. And you got to go more than too deep at a lot of positions. And that's what IU's trying to do here in the secondary. Next up is the latest recruit, probably the one that turned the most heads, Pat Coogan from Notre Dame. He started 12 of the 15 games at center for the Irish. Had lost his position at guard. Center gets hurt. He steps in at center, plays well, takes the Irish all the way to the national championship game, comes up with the 4 quarters of FU football speeches. He's a guy who's going to be a leader on that offensive line, really solidifies it. Instead of moving Bray Lynch over to center, you put Bray Lynch back at guard, put Coogan at center. It stabilizes the offensive line. And, if some of these young guys could step up, you feel comfortable about 9 guys going into spring practice.
Yeah.
Who could play. And that's if Drew Evans is healthy, you've got 9 guys who could play. And that's from where this offensive line was 2-3 years ago to say, hey, we're going into spring practice. And we called, I think Rhett said it on BTN last year during the spring game, is that the offensive coaches feel most confident in the offensive line. And you're going, wait, what?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So it's now going into it. You feel like everybody feels confident now. You got some Power 4 starters, 2 guys who went to the national title. You bring Carter Smith as a dude. Bray Lynch was really good at guard. Evans, if he could come back at guard, is really good. And then you bring in Khalil Benson too, who's a Power 4 starter who won what Colorado win 9 games. Then they went to the Alamo Bowl.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Coogan's a big one. Obviously, because he is replacing Mike Kadich, who had a great season, great career.
Coogan's a big one because he's good and the position he plays.
Yeah, exactly. And I think not only is he a great pickup, obviously you beat out a ton of guys. He was supposed to visit Michigan the next day. They didn't let him leave. He committed and signed before he even went to visit Michigan. But but yeah, I like if Drew Evans is healthy, tore his Achilles before the Ohio State game. That seems like a stretch, or before the Michigan game, maybe.
It was
Uh,
before the Michigan game,
yeah,
which really, impacted. You saw the impact it
yeah,
had with the
yeah. Then Tyler
pressures that were getting
Stevens
on
comes
Rams.
in. Yeah, but I mean Evans, if he's healthy, full stop, he's your starter at left guard. Like he was outstanding. Like
Yeah,
he was awesome at left guard last season. So yeah, like now you're
I mean,
not
this gives you
rushing.
you don't
You
have to
don't,
rush him back,
yeah,
and if he needs the year, he could take the year.
yeah. Like obviously you want him and you want to be as healthy as possible, but yeah, like now you are not like banking on a guy coming off a torn Achilles to anchor your side, with Carter Smith on the left side of the line.
So you're
Um,
not the New York Jets.
you're exactly. So yeah. So yeah, I mean, but Evans was great last year. So that was the big thing with Coogan for me is you can leave Lynch at guard, and then if the right side of your line ends up being Benson and Mikowski, like you feel good
Fun.
about that. Yeah,
Yep.
you feel good about that. So Sammy, I guess just high level before we get into some questions here. Overall portal class, like your thoughts. I have mine, but I'll let you go first here.
Oh, I think I really want to say it's a perfect portal class, but this is what your portal class is supposed to be. You're supposed to plug holes. You're not building a team from it. Um, and it's getting more towards, more balance. Last year, I think they brought in, 38 guys from the portal. This
Yeah,
year is 20, 21 if you count EJ Williams, who we didn't talk
right.
about, but he's another guy who, man, that it makes that wide receiver room that much better, especially if he's 100%. And he came on in 2023 at the end of the year. He made that big catch against Northwestern. Clearly didn't burn bridges with Signetti. Said, "Hey, I want to get to 100%," but Sig said, "I control who redshirts," so the portal was the only move for him. But
Yep.
clearly didn't want to leave. I think it's a very, very good portal class.
Yep.
You filled the needs. You got the best quarterback available at the time in Mendoza. You got a very good running back who people wanted. You got the best tight end transfer. You got the starting center off the national runner up. You got an offensive lineman from the national champion team. You have Michigan's leading wide receiver. You've got a couple all conference dudes from the lower level coming up. And look, we'll see what happens in spring ball. The portal haul might not be done because there is another spring window, but outside of edge rusher, and we'll talk about that in a
Yeah.
minute or so. Outside of edge rusher, they answered every question.
Yeah, agree. And I think they probably raised the floor of the talent by position group, I would say. And like I think you upgraded just about every position. Like quarterback, I think you're hoping Mendoza plays as well as Rourke, like because he just was so outstanding. But I think across the board, otherwise, like in terms of just like talent and body type and recruit level, I think you raised the floor of the talent at every position. Um, Defensive tackle, I think those two guys are productive, but Carpenter and West were so good. So like obviously that'll be tough to replicate. But um, like defensive back wise, I think you nailed it. You've got in safeties that fit how you want to play. Boykin was banged up a little bit last year, so that's one to watch. But yeah, corner, I think you nailed it. Safety you did pretty well. Offensive line, Coogan was the cherry on top of this class. Running back's awesome. I love the receivers they grabbed. Two different kind of tight ends, specialists. Like I think they had a plan for sure. And last year it was kind of helter skelter. We need bodies, we need guys. This year it seemed like we know who we want to bring on campus. We know who we're spending money on. And for the most part, I think they nailed most of their top targets, honestly. So I'm really excited about who they brought in. I think next season you'll see more of the high school guys that they brought in the last 2 years play, definitely more so than this past season. But I think overall, if it's not an A, it's probably like an A minus for me on the overall class.
Yeah, let's get to some questions before we get out of here for the night. Alex, first question is, let's go from inside the pylon. He asked multiple questions. I think we answered them throughout the show. Do you feel like Mendoza could replicate similar success in IU's offense that Rourke did?
Yeah,
Yes.
not that that's the floor. Like Rourke was so outstanding. I'm not going to say that's the baseline, but yeah, I mean the signs are there. Mendoza was pretty dang good against good teams with a subpar situation. So yeah, I mean I think Shanahan has all the tools and all the weapons he needs to put together a good season for Mendoza.
Yep. Next question from them. Has Indiana added the needed depth for the defensive line that hurt them in 2024? I don't think depth was a problem in 2024. I think, you lose a lot of productive guys going into this season, and you replace them as best as you could with Radcliffe and Wheeler. You hope that Marcus Burris could step up. You hope that Landino could step up again. He had a great
Tucker,
freshman year. And some of these other guys,
Tyreek Tucker,
Tyreek Tucker had a good year, and you hope that some of these other guys could build the depth, but they should be stout there. Newcomer, not named Mendoza, that'll be most successful on the team in 2025.
Yeah, I'll go Morris on offense. I touched on that when we ran through. I just think you look at his skill set and what he was able to do when he got the ball. I think in this scheme, with just the different attacks IU showed last year, I think this is a guy that's going to have a lot of chances to make plays. So that's my one on offense. Defensively, I think like either Moore or Boykin for me. Two guys that just are around the ball. Boykin is a hard hitter. I mean, he's going to be up at the line making plays in the run game. So I think you saw that a lot. Like Terry Jones rushed the passer a lot. Asbury was in the backfield making plays in the run game. So I think both of those safeties have chances to make plays, and Moore and Boykin.
I'll go Hemby on offense. I think he adds a new dynamic to the offense at running back that could take the top off of a defense. And then I think it's Rylan Gandy on defense. People are going to stay away from D'Angelo Pons. They're not going to throw it his way. And it's going to give him a chance to make more plays. So let's get into more questions. From Hoosier Man, has Indiana football done enough in the portal up front to sustain 2024 success? Absolutely. I think so. And we just talked about that with Coogan and Michaletsky and Cleo Benson. I think they've if Evans is healthy, you go 9 deep, you feel pretty good. Position group from Gridiron Hoosier position group. You're most confident in position group with concern heading into spring ball.
Most confident for me, I will say, I think running back, you could go 5 deep. I do like all the guys they have at running back. I like the wide receiver room as well. So I think skill position wise on offense, I feel pretty confident in those guys. If Wilson had played 12 games last year, I probably would have said quarterback, but that does worry me a little bit. That maybe the 2s and 3s at QB aren't as strong. Most concern, I'm not concerned because I like what I saw from Isaiah Jones and Elijah Hardy last year. I am surprised they didn't add a linebacker in the portal, and maybe that's something they will do. Obviously, you lose Jalen Walker, who had a monster season. You bring Fisher back.
But I love Quentin Clark.
Yeah, redshirt freshman. That's TJ's guy. He's been on him for, honestly, since we started recruiting him like 4 years ago. So redshirt freshman out of Georgia, super, super athletic. Honestly, a lot like Jalen Walker. So that's one for me. And then I think edge rusher, you get Kamara back from the NFL, which was awesome. And again, probably not super cheap. But yeah, edge for me, I think you need another guy. You lose Linnell Carr, who had a good season. That's one I think you'll see them maybe be a little active in the portal. If it's not a superstar, at least a guy that's a little bit more experienced and has played. But edge, I think probably more so than linebacker. Right now, you're counting on a bunch of guys really that haven't played. So that would be a big one for me, would be defensive end.
Yeah, and we'll see if they address it in the spring portal and what happens there. The next question I want to get to is kind of a silly one, but it's okay. From Hoosier Data, with all the attention to Bryant Haynes is getting from last year's defensive performance, is this year we see the Shanahan's offense unleashed with the addition of Mendoza. Before we answer, let me show you where Indiana ranked in offense last year. This leashed Indiana offense finished second in the nation in points at 41.3, behind Miami, who is at 43.9. Passing offense finished top 25 in passing offense. Ready to go. Scored a gazillion points. Rushing offense, Indiana was again in the top 20 of passing offense. 165 yards per game. So it's What else do you want?
Offense had a good year. Yeah, offense had a really good season. Obviously, people are going to remember the Notre Dame game and the Ohio State game, which I get it. It makes sense. But I don't know. Had an outstanding season. It was his first time calling plays in the Big Ten. I think rather than teams like now knowing our scheme, I think it's more of an advantage that Shanahan now has a year calling plays against Big Ten teams rather than teams watching what we've been doing. Yeah, I think offense is primed to have another monster season. We talked about the additions. The scheme is the scheme, but I think they showed they have the ability to scheme up some different things depending on the opponent. And like I said, playing those big-time road games against Ohio State and Notre Dame, I think that's going to help the staff, and I think it's going to help Shanahan get ready for those road games. But yeah, I mean, they ran the ball like crazy. They had two guys with over 10 rushing touchdowns. They threw the ball all over the yard. They brought in a bunch of guys that clearly want to play in this offense. They could have gone other places, obviously. I'm really excited. So yeah, I like Haynes. The defense was amazing. Offense was awesome too. And yeah, like if Haynes gets plucked for a head coaching job first, Shanahan probably won't be far behind him. So yeah, I think it's awesome. And you only lose Sunseri off the staff. He didn't call plays. Like I get it, but like obviously you're going to make the jump to a power 2 school, power 4 school like that. Yeah, really excited for another year with Shanahan dialing up plays. Remember, I want everybody to remember what we have come from on offense here. So like if I say Mike DeBoard, like, yeah.
I do think that IU has a more of a home run threat offense this year, going in with Hemby, and some of these wide receivers as well. But I mean, how unleashed do you want it to be? They're not just going to run go routes the entire time. And then finally, this is getting into the weeds a little bit. From Jamie Jordan, thoughts on the new 105 hard cap for the roster. I think it's still unclear what the actual rules are, in terms of you do get 105 scholarships. If you go over 85, you get fined on your NIL cap. That's what SIG said in, I think, December. It looks like IU is going to stay at that 85 scholarships, which gives you 20 walk-ons or so. Is it 105? Are they going to have a taxi squad? Do they have a practice squad just in case guys get hurt or guys leave in the portal? I mean, there's a lot to still figure out with all this stuff. But I think they'll stay at the 85 scholarships, and then you're going to get these preferred walk-ons. And it's going to limit opportunities for these walk-ons too. And maybe it's that one where you say, hey, this is where your collectives come in. We're going to give you X amount of NIL dollars to come instead of a scholarship and all that stuff. Another interesting thing is that it's no longer a head count scholarship sport. you could split scholarships. So let's say you and I are awesome at football, but not too awesome to deserve a full scholarship, but just awesome enough to get a partial scholarship, and they could split a scholarship here and there, and maybe that's the difference between getting a guy who would go to a G5 school on scholarship instead of a preferred walk on at a Power Four school. So all that's interesting to watch. You also have Stuart Mandel complaining that college football's dying after all these national media guys said the college football playoff was awesome and things like that. So it's gonna be. I just want games back and stuff like that. But we'll have all the coverage for spring football coming up. Any final thoughts, Alex?
No, this was great. I think there was lots of stuff that happened since the season ended. IU season ended, the college football season ended to where we are today. So hopefully this is helpful for people. I think IU is set up again to have a really good season, and we'll get more into the schedule and how other teams are looking and position groups and all. Like, we have a ton of stuff coming for everybody, but felt this was good to do like a state of the roster, let the dust settle on the portal. Let's see where we landed, that kind of a situation.
Yep.
IU has a tough schedule next year for sure. Those three non-conference games, or those three conference games I talked about on the road, are tough. Illinois early in the season is going to be a really, really tough game. They bring back a ton of good players. But we'll see. I mean, we've wanted to be in these kind of games forever. IU's going to have a bunch of them next season, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, should really be excited about the roster. I think it's a really good time if you're able to afford it and get to games, to think about season tickets. If you're able to think about Hoosiers Connect, I would think about that. If you're able to buy some merch, I would think about that. Like, all this stuff matters. And as IU continues to add and hopefully advance things, like, this is what we wanted. And to sustain this level of success, you got to pay, you got to support the team, you got to tune into stuff. Like, all this stuff matters. So like, I am fired up for next season. I'm fired up for spring ball and the spring game. Can't wait to start hearing press conferences where Sig won't tell us anything about how any of the guys are looking on the field. And yeah, I'm excited for it all. And IU's coming off an 11-win season. We beat out Georgia and Miami for a quarterback in the portal. We got an offensive lineman from Notre Dame. I mean, for me, the list goes on. And I think if you look at the roster compared to last season, I think you upgraded it in totality. Obviously, you have to win games, you have to play well. But if IU is able to stack really, really good seasons like the one they had last year, even if you don't win 11 games, man, who knows what could be next. So I'm really excited. Hope everybody else is too. But yeah, we'll be on the lookout for spring ball starting here pretty soon. We'll have a ton of stuff to come around that. We'll have people down there covering, watching practice, all of that good stuff.
If we're allowed to watch practice.
Yeah,
you
we'll
closed
see.
it last year.
Yeah, hopefully a couple. But yeah, so lots to come. We'll have lots of breakdowns on position groups, opponents, schedule, any other news that comes out. But IU went 11-2 last season, made the college football playoff, lost the quarterback's coach, and upgraded the roster. So I think it's an extremely exciting time, and hopefully everybody else is excited too.
Yeah, it's a great time to be an Indiana football fan. And again, come to HoosierHuddle.com. You could put all the basketball drama aside, come and enjoy the football side of things. We'll try to limit our hot takes that have taken over some of the football side of stuff, but we'll bring you anything that would affect Indiana football this year, next year, or anytime down the road. And we'll be covering the spring game April 19th at noon at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington. Hopefully the weather warms up by then, but we'll see. It is Indiana. So that does it. You can follow us on X at Hoosier_Huddle. Find us on Blue Sky as well. It's Hoosier Huddle over at Blue Sky. And then keep coming back to HoosierHuddle.com. Thank you, Alex. And
Nate, we hope you're staying warm in Fargo, where it's a balmy, probably -30.
Yep.
So shout out to our guy Nate Comp. Hopefully Wilson hooked him up with a jacket as he's out there on work.